time. Now, the analysis of the study, which I will talk about, the aim was really analyzing formal characteristics of drawings made by congenitally blind children in teenagers in Poland, India, Nepal, Samoa, and Singapore. Because of the time limit, I will only focus on Poland, India, and Nepal. And also, we wanted to check how recognizable these drawings are for sighted persons. And one more thing we wanted to check was to check the effect of training with a transfer graph, which some of you may have sort of seen on our stand, and other resources on recognizability of representational drawings made by totally blind learners. In Poland, we designed a special sort of experiment with a pre-test, then training with a transfer graph, and there was a post-test. In Nepal and India and in these other countries, it wasn't really a research-based study. I went there just simply with a course of tactile graphics, teaching blind children who had never ever done any drawings to make some drawings. But they made some before training, then after training with a transfer graph, teddy bear puzzle, Flexaman. And they made some drawing after training, but this made a nice collection of drawings to analyze, for example, their recognizability. Now, we know from research that development of drawing skills of blind children follows the same pattern and the same stages as development of these skills in sighted children, but with a delay and at a slower pace. This is true provided that blind learners are given the opportunity to make and to explore drawings, and very often they are not. In Nepal, I came across a young boy, 16 years old, who said, "I know the Nepali word for a drawing, but I don't know what it means." Now, success, tactograph, you know how difficult it is really for a blind person to understand and to really use efficiently. Some of the sources of understanding, the difficulties with understanding tactographics come from the gaps in the knowledge of the world. If a child has never explored anything, you can't really expect that he'll make a good drawing of that object. A more serious problem, I think, is the sighted conventions used in drawings. And I believe for sighted people to recognize drawings made by blind persons, I think it's probably because there are some blind conventions of drawing which sighted people are not aware of. Here's a drawing, and then some blind participants now can move to the first top left corner on your tactile slides. If you need more, I've got some more here. That's a drawing of a table, one line for the tabletop and two lines for legs, which is very difficult for a blind person to understand why. If you ask a blind person to draw a table, very often you will get something like, and that's the next picture, to the right, a square or a rectangle with four legs in all directions. That's how a blind person explores a table. In this slide, the next one in the top right corner, that was in probably top, that was probably on the slide, that's probably the bottom right corner. You have a Christmas tree and a deciduous tree, which is again very difficult to recognize. If you ask a blind person to draw a table, a tree, one of our girls in Poland drew a circle, asked, "Why would you draw a tree like a circle?" She said, "Well, because when I walk up to a tree and put my arms around it, my arms make a circle." The best one of all, which I always use, is this drawing of a school bus with windows and wheels and engine. And in England, many years ago, an English blind girl drew a bus like this, one horizontal line for the step, one vertical line for the pole she holds onto while getting on the bus, and another horizontal line for the seat. The fact that buses tend to have wheels didn't bother her at all. Maybe she never had a model of a bus. So, nevertheless, given the opportunity, totally blind children will engage in drawing, developing with time ability to produce recognizable drawings of various objects and arrangements of objects, occasionally achieving remarkable results. Here's a lovely drawing made by a 9-year-old girl in Poland, born blind, Lily of the Valleys, the flower. I think as many sighted people couldn't produce better. And the best one of all, this Turkish artist, you may have heard of him, Esraf Armagan from Turkey. He was invited by the Volvo company to make a painting of one of the models of Volvo cars. And it's really unbelievable that he is totally blind. Now, when we go to the stages of development of children's drawings, the first one is scribble, meaningless scribble. But sometimes children add a meaning to the scribble, and then we call it like fortuitous realism. So here is, in your slides, you will find these lots of vertical lines in the bottom left corner. A vertical line, that's rain, a child said. And the next one, with all these lines going up and down, and left and right, is a story that one blind boy in Poland told me. This is how me and my mum in the shopping centre. First we went to this shop, then went to that shop, and then went to that shop. So the next stage is failed realism, where the child attempts to draw something, but doesn't succeed. On the top half, now there is no slide for that, I explained there is a circle and lines all around it, more like someone would draw a sun. That's supposed to be a person, except that the legs and arms around look like someone chopped them off and threw it around. They're not connected to the head. But intellectual realism, where you can recognize in the lower part here a stick figure of a man, but many, many elements are missing. And finally, the visual realism, where the picture really resembles what is intended to resemble. So here's a very nice drawing of a teddy bear made by a girl in Nepal. Hypotheses that we put forward were for the following. Blind children's drawings have more formal features typical for failed and intellectual realism than those typical for visual realism. The second hypothesis was drawings made by blind children who had training with the transfer graph are more easily recognizable than those made before such training. And the third, drawings made after training with the transfer graph show fewer features typical for failed realism than those made before such training. The materials we used were just a plastic film for drawing and a silicone the base and a stylus. Plus, they said like the transfer graph is the wooden box with some models of furniture we can sort of slide in and then they reveal just like in outlines. And some of you may have seen it upstairs in the Hungry Finger stand. It also has the transfer graph has other models, a chair, a bed, and some other furniture. The procedure in Poland was that children were asked to draw one of the three objects, something which can be fully explored manually, an apple or a pear or a table. Then a house, something which cannot be explored manually and fully, a house or a tree, and then a configuration of objects, for example, a kitchen or a room. In Nepal, India, Samoa, Singapore, in my training course, they would draw an egg or a coconut. In Nepal, it was a stone instead of a coconut, a chair, a table, and then a person and a tree. That was before their training. And after training, they would repeat drawings of egg, coconut, or a stone, table, chair, the side view. But to check understanding of what they learned, they would have to draw a chair seen from the back and a bed. They would draw a bed, which they did not practice with the transfer graph, and they would also draw a teddy bear and a person. Evaluation was like this. We had two teams, one-sighted judges. One would examine the readability or recognizability of these drawings without any prompts as to what the pictures represent. And the other team knew what the child wanted to draw, so they had a title of each drawing. So here are some examples in Poland. The pre-test apple, just a few sort of oval shapes. But in the post-test, there are more details, and the child added this little sort of tail of a piece of the plant when you pick a tree from the tree. The test before, there was like a few vertical lines and a horizontal line. But in the post-test, this was like maybe a copy or a drawing of a line for tabletop and two legs. A tree first was like a trapezoid shape of something, but in the post-test there were several trees, vertical lines with some doodles on top representing leaves. And the house, before the test, you have a door with a handle, and on top of the door there was a house with windows added on both sides. In post-test, the house looks more like a house, no doors, but the windows are in the house and a chimney was added. And if you have a room, you have some door with a handle in the pre-test and something with windows added on both sides. In the post-test, something which looks more like a floor plan of the room, except that there is a door with a handle, but then there is a bed, there is a wardrobe, the child said, and some other piece of furniture. In India, the egg and the coconut before the training there was a lot of training actually with children drawing lines and circles before they attempt to draw anything at all. But the egg and coconut look very much the same. But after the training, the children would recognize the difference in size, And one child added some hairs around the coconut, which he felt. So that was really interesting. And so this is how I work with the transfer graph in India and in Nepal. One of the girls looking at the drawing of a table there. Before the test, many drawings were unintelligible, like a zigzag. But after the training, most children would draw a horizontal line and two legs for the table. I had a surprise solution that from one child. After the training, I got something which I didn't know what it was. It's a rectangle with 4 little squares in each corner. And I went, what's that? And then the child said, look, I drew the table from up underneath. He's turned it upside down. And then, of course, there was this rectangle and the 4 legs, which look like little squares. And I knew, wow, yes, he has learned. He understands. I had a very nice message from New Zealand. A lady presented her presentation at the SPEVI conference earlier this year. And the caption says, this shows the progress that one student made in just one session with the transfer graph. And you have some little circular lines in the first, then there are some horizontal lines in the second, and a good drawing of a table in the third. And I thought, fine, but I don't know, does the child really understand? Or maybe it's just a copy of the drawing from the book or from the transfer graph. You need to check that. So the way I do it, for example, here we have a slide showing a little girl in India and a model of a chair and a real chair. She's comparing the two. And then she made a nice side view drawing of a side view of a chair. But then I would ask her or other children to draw a chair seen from the back, and which they had not practiced, or a bed, which they did not practice. And when I get, what do we say here, like the chair from the back, a rectangle and 2 little legs underneath, I know, yes, they understand. For people, we start with teddy bears for body parts. What I love, whenever possible, to have 3 things: a model, a drawing, and an intermediate shape, something flat, which is no longer a model, but not yet a drawing. And for the teddy bear, I have a flat wooden magnetic puzzle, which you can assemble into a teddy bear. And also for people, drawing of people, I use the Fleximan, the little magnetic stick figure, which you can arrange into any shape. You can make him run or bend down or touch his head. So that's the intermediate shape. And the result I got in Nepal was the girl who first drew this circle and arms and legs flying around. Then she produced this tadpole. And then with the Fleximan, she produced a rather nice stick figure, easily recognizable as a drawing of a person. And as a reward at the end of the course, I asked them to draw something which will illustrate concept like above, on, under, in between, next to. And I got this drawing of a teddy bear standing between a chair and a table, and balls over, under a table, and a coconut falling off the chair, I was told. So the results. Hypothesis 1, blind children's drawings have more formal features typical for failed realism than those typical for visual realism. This was confirmed. It was also confirmed that before the training, blind children's drawing had more features of failed realism than after the training with the transfer graph. Hypothesis 2, drawings made by blind children who had training with the transfer graph are more easily recognizable than those made before such training. Here the hypothesis was partly confirmed. Judges who did not have the prompts as to what the drawings represent had some problems with recognizing some of the drawings made after the training, but when the judges knew what the drawing represents, they agreed, yes, I can see that is much more easily recognizable. And hypothesis 3, drawings made after training with the transfer graph show fewer features typical for failed realism than those made before such training. And this one was confirmed. It's possible that once the children understood the convention of projection and the relation between objects and drawings, they tried to follow this convention in other drawings, which in turn made their drawings more easy to recognize. So summing up, I'd say the experiments suggest that the delay found in blind children's development of drawing skills can be made up for through training and with the help of educational resources such as the transfer graph and other resources. And I've done some work with adult people who never had or didn't do any drawings when they were children. So here are the collection of these Hungry Fingers resources. And I didn't put the conclusion about the cultural, there wasn't any difference. The children had similar problems and they made similar progress in all of these countries. So that's it. Tack så mycket. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is it on? No? No. No. Okay, it takes a while. For this very interesting presentation, I was thinking you talked about that the drawings are recognizable, but recognizable for sighted.
Yes.
Have you ever tried to see if blind children can recognize each other's drawings?
We do it all the time because one of the reason how I got involved into visual impairment was I started teaching English as a foreign language to blind children. So we very often have drawing activities, and we exchange drawings there, so they have to guess and so. But it wasn't really done as a research. It was just practical activities. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Depends on how good the children are already. But I'm sure that would be very interesting.
Yeah. I'm sure that you are familiar with David Katz, the drawing and the blind made in Tomteboda in 1946.
There's a study that, although having said that, I must say that I have only recently got involved in some research with the help of a colleague from the psychology department. The reason was when I first started teaching children in Poland in a school for blind children, and I was introduced as Mr. Bogusław Marek from University of Lublin, one child said to me, "Oh, so are you going to write a doctoral dissertation about us?" And then I said, no. If I do anything at all, it'll be very practically oriented. Yeah. So, anyway.
Okay, are there some questions in the audience?
Yes, I think it's what you asked, but are you saying that all the judges were sighted?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry.
More questions? But I have several. Is it okay? But, yes, I was thinking also, could you see any cultural differences between the children in the different countries, in the way how they express themselves in the
Not
drawings?
so much, but I had to be very careful as to what I would ask them to draw. For example, the course that I did in Nepal, teaching children to understand maps. And with the approach, we have like the breakfast set with a spoon and a mug and a tea and a fork and a knife. And then I discovered I was ready for my course, and then they eat with fingers. So all of my materials, which I prepared, were good for nothing. I had to think of something else. Yeah. But I would probably not. If you choose the right tempo, the right materials, the reactions, I think they're children. No matter where they come from, they're just children, very enthusiastic, wanting to learn. So I didn't really, but I would have to choose carefully topics for drawing, like changing stone for a coconut.
Yeah, I understand. And also that they are, so to say, taught by you. So you taught them to draw from our perspective.
True, and
it
also
could be of interest to see how if they do it independently from you.
Yes, well, there wasn't really time. And before I came, there was nothing. They had never done any drawing at all. So like this 16-year-old boy said, I know the word, but I don't know what it means. So if I had more time and more money, maybe I could spend some time and do that. But I just had to do my job. Thank you very much.
There is one question, but... No, wait. I'm sorry.
Yes. Well, there are sorry? Oh, okay. Well, my name is Jaap Breider, and I am involved in tactile drawing quite heavily. And I would like to have to meet the mother of the girl that drew the bus, because I think being exposed to things in real nature, like 3D models or just the real thing, would have solved the drawing quite a bit. So one thing is that if you need to have the exposure, that's one thing, and then developing the skills just to draw. I mean, you need to have the tooling capacities to be able to do the drawing as a process, so to say. So the drawings that were made by the children could be much better if they have more exposure to the real world. And if they had more exercise in doing the drawing. I mean, if a boy of 16 years old had never done the drawing, well, that's a really pity for his development, I would say.
Well, I entirely agree. The more experienced children go, the better they get at new drawings, and then you can use drawings for helping them understand the world. They can better understand drawings of something which they cannot really explore manually once they learn with these things. But the drawing of the bus, I regret I do not know the source. I first saw it before I was involved in visual impairment about 20 or so years ago in England in one of the newspapers. So I just remembered the picture but not the source, and I cannot really quote it now. There's no way I can find it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you need to hand over to the
Very
next
much.
speaker.
All right. Mm-hmm.